Mr. Pagoulatos, do you believe in a federal EMU, European Monetary Union, so that the problems that we saw happening in the Eurozone will be solved? Is that the only solution?
I believe that a federal EMU would solve the problems. However, a truly federal economic and monetary union is difficult, if not impossible, to attain within the visible future. Therefore, it seems to me that the only realistic option is to move forward towards completing the steps towards a federalization, a gradual federalization of our monetary union. That is turning it into more of an economic union. It will never become a truly federal economic union, but it can be a currency union that can acquire elements, increasingly elements of economic integration, fiscal integration, and banking integration, and eventually political integration as well.
Do you see it happening that everyone has the same tax system, all the countries in the EMU having the same tax system, having the same VAT in the tourism business? I can have an example because it's something that hurts Greece now, the 23% of VAT. Do you see that happening in the near future?
No, I don't see this happening, and I'm not quite convinced that it is necessary or even desirable to have that. The economies in the Eurozone are quite different. They will always be different, in the same way that the states in the US are different in terms of the productive capacity, in terms of the competitiveness of their sectors. And therefore, there are various arrangements, such as tax rates, that have to reflect this divergence or diversity of productivity levels and the whole way in which the capitalist systems in the Eurozone are structured. The models of capitalism in the Eurozone are different, and a part of the difference is also that they have different tax rates. But what we need to have, we cannot have tax harmonization, but we need to have greater convergence and greater coordination of tax policy. That is something that we need, and what we certainly need is to have a much stronger coordination of the Eurozone countries and the European Union in tackling tax evasion, bank secrecy, and organized tax avoidance and tax havens. These are areas where the European Union and the Eurozone, both at the central level and at a cross-national level, have to do more. Because the burden of taxation today falls increasingly upon productive forces, the factors of production that are important for our economies to grow. We have to move the tax burden away from incomes, away from businesses, towards consumption, towards real estate, and I would say eventually raising the tax burden on financial sector, though this would require global level intervention. It doesn't make sense to do it only at the local level or at the regional level, in order to foster conditions of a more conducive institutional environment that will help growth.
Do you believe that the fear of being thrown out of the Eurozone has to remain or even get stronger? Should we change the EMU in that way so that the country can be kicked out of the Eurozone immediately if it behaves like Greece?
No, I think that it's certain that the fear of an exit in the case of Greece kind of focused attention. It concentrated the mind and it accelerated adjustment and agreement, both on the part of the Greek government and also on the part of the partners, but mainly on the part of the Greek government over the summer under the Tsipras government. And it also raised the salience and the risks vis-a-vis the public opinion, which remains a public opinion that's overwhelming support of remaining in the euro insofar as Greece is concerned. But creating a precedent of an exit would be a terrible thing, not just for the country that would exit, but also for the Eurozone. The Eurozone is built upon the assumption of irrevocability. A currency union makes sense only if it is irreversible, if it's irrevocable. If you entertain the possibility that any member of a currency union can exit the single currency, then you turn it into a system of fixed exchange rates, which is a totally different system, and you deprive it of all the benefits that come from having an irrevocable single currency. For example, you allow for the currency redenomination risk to return, and this would mean in our practical case that in a Eurozone where peripheral economies are faced with the risk of Brexit, the cost of credit for the peripheral economies of Greece, Portugal, Spain, Italy would be constantly higher because they would have to incorporate the risk of exit, and this means that their businesses would constantly suffer higher borrowing costs, higher capital costs, and would lose competitiveness vis-a-vis their competitors in the other Eurozone countries of the core. And thus they would have to recover, to make up, to offset this loss of competitiveness by further suppressing labor costs, wages, or by trying to be productive in other ways, which is very difficult to do under normal conditions, cannot do it eternally. And this could lead the economies in the periphery to constantly sort of self-feeding recessions and wage deflation cycles that would end up at the end of the day making the coexistence and the participation in the single currency area intolerable, politically intolerable, and thus forcing an exit at the end of the day. So that would be a very bad development for the Eurozone.